Okay, hi everybody. So we are now ready to move on to the next session. This session addresses one of the other core topics of the conference, which is institutional history and the challenges the colleagues we have on stage have faced to make sure institutional history remains relevant in the 21st century. Quite a challenge to address. So we have representatives from 4 museums, starting to my right, I want to make sure I pronounce it right, the Riga Stradins University Museum in Latvia. We have our colleagues from the Police Museum in Turkey, our colleagues from Takri Museum, and the Sangal Archives. I'm very ashamed because I left the paper with all your names, and I'm really scared to mispronounce any of your names. So that's why I go for the more institutional approach. But let's follow on the model we had from the previous session. We will do the presentations one after the other, and then we can all gather back and have a nice conversation about some of the projects that you've been leading. So we will start with the Police Museum, if you want.
Hi. As a chief of police since 31 years, I have managed many demonstrations and social events, but I never been this excited, I have to say. Hi everyone, hola a todos, merhaba herkese. I'm very excited and very happy to be here with distinguished colleague in a historical and gorgeous place. Let me tell you a short story of our adventure. The Turkish National Police is one of the oldest institutions in our country, but there was no museum area where it could exhibit the institution's cultural heritage and development and pass it on to the next generation. In fact, this idea came to the fore in 1911 and 1917 during the Ottoman Empire. And even 1917, the artifacts started to be collected, but it couldn't be realized due to condition of the First World War. The young Turkish Republic inherited the Ottoman legacy, including the dream of a museum. During the Republican period, the artifact exhibited locally in some areas, but it couldn't be turned into a comprehensive museum. In 2019, when I took office, just like the young Republic of Turkey, I found the museum project on my desk and tried to cope with this unexpected situation. As you see, we are police, so we are not familiar with museum issues. At first, we are really lost. What way to go like Alice in Wonderland has been one of our biggest problems at first. Also, many other responsibilities of our department, for example, police martyr families and veterans, psychological counseling service, social facilities, social activities for our member, mobile food truck service in case of disaster. Also, pandemic process, time and budget limit, and lack of enough artifact to exhibit and artistic work of the museum, some of the other problems we faced during the foundation. It was really a challenge, a difficult challenge. After the museum opened with big ceremonies, we thought there'd be a lot of people, but nobody came. We are so disappointed, so disappointed. By the way, I want to confess something to you. When I started this museum project, I didn't know the 104 years old story of the museum that I mentioned at the beginning of my speech. Actually, nobody knew. We knew only the story after the 2014. Therefore, we founded the museum and learned the whole story by historian. I honestly experienced very mixed emotion. I was frightened, proud, and surprised. I had a cold sore on my lips and turned to my friends. Do you know what we have done? We are now part of the history. Because history is not only the past, history is made every day in the present. After learning this journey, we wanted to see everyone this place. Afterwards, we increased both the number of our visitors and donation to artifacts thanks to promotional activities. I'm sorry, I forgot sometimes. Thanks to promotional activities. For example, TV and radio programs, using social media opportunities, going to school in person, hosting celebrities, hanging a banner in the city center. Our museum became an area contribute to public relation, where awareness raising and educational activities are held for children, young people, women, our martyr families, and to the citizens. By the way, we had many visitors from different countries, all over the world. All over the continents also. We hosted also dear Amina Kırbabak and Mark O'Neill in our museum. Our museum enabled us to show the warm face of the police to the citizen and to say, we are one of you, don't afraid us you, don't afraid us. Our adventure brought us here, and we are also proud to be nominated for distinguished award. I'm also proud as a woman to finalize a long story of the museum. Thank to all of you, thank to all my team here or not. Finally, I want to thank all Minister of Interior, Mr. Süleyman Soylu, and General Director of Turkish National Police, Mr. Mehmet Aktaş, for motivating us and for supporting us. Thank you. Now, we have a 3 minutes video. Let's watch it together. Thank you.
In September 2019, construction and art collection works were resumed with the support of experts in culture, history, art, architecture, and museum.
Bu eserin ortaya çıkmasına katkı sağlayan herkese teşekkürü bir borç bilerim.
The first and only professional police museum of our country met its visitors on April 9, 2021 and made a dream come true. The cultural heritage of an organization whose main task is to fight crime and criminals and the development it has experienced with the country are exhibited in our museum. At first, our goal of fulfilling only one instruction was transformed into a goal where we could show the warm face of the police to children, young people, women, and all visitors. The advertisement, by using social media opportunities with press organs, by going to schools in person, and by hosting celebrities in our museum, has increased both the number of museum visitors and the donation of works to our museum. The fact that a 104-year adventure exceeded expectations enabled our employees, retirees, martyr families, and even citizens who visited the museum to donate items of historical importance that they kept at home. Our museum became a place that our citizens meet with the police, whom they cry for help in times of need and at other times whom they are afraid of. Therefore, the cold phase of policing has turned into a warm phase and an opportunity to establish good relations with the public as a result of communication with young people, children, women, disadvantaged groups, and our citizens. What do we do for social interaction in the museum? We tell unheard stories.
Karakolda ayna var.
We take you on nostalgic journeys. We teach traffic rules with games. We provide new information. We are reminded of the existence of our martyrs. We organize social and awareness-raising activities. As a result, a 104-year instruction was fulfilled. Our museum helped us to get closer to the society, to give the message, the police are one of you, and to show how the hand of the police, which is an iron fist for criminals, turns into cotton for the innocent. The museum became a social and cultural meeting point.
Thank you very much. We'll now follow on with the Thackeray Museum of Medicine. Thank you.
Okay, we're just going to kick off with a video, if that's all right. Which is missing a lot of sound. Let's try that again. Okay, I don't know what's happened there, but EMYA is introducing you to our wonderful museum, which is in Leeds, in the north of England. Our museum used to be a Victorian workhouse. It's been part of the hospital in its time, but since 1997 it's been the Thackeray Museum of Medicine, following on from the Thackeray Medical Company, which founded it after the company was taken over by several people. So in 2019 we embarked on a £4 million redevelopment project, which took in the entirety of the museum, its galleries, its exhibition spaces, completely transforming them. And what was really unique about our experience and about our journey was the entirety of the museum has been co-created with people from across our local community. People like Ross here worked with several volunteer groups, people from health, well-being, partnerships, all kinds of things, so that we could better tell their stories through the collection that we have in our museum. Jamie here, our Director of Collections and Programming, has been part of that journey, working with several people too. And in 2020, we were the only place to be a COVID vaccine hub that was a museum, making the New York Times in 2021. I'll go straight into my speech, seeing as how we can't tell what they're saying on screen, but I am Edward Appleyard. I'm Chief Executive of the Thackeray Museum. I'm absolutely delighted to be here representing us. Now, and also totally fudging whatever speech was on that video. Now, I would have said most of that video was introduced by EMYA. EMYA is an incredibly intelligent person. She's a disabled person that works with us. She is on a Curating for Change fellowship, and she's been working with us for the past year. We're delighted we're actually going to be able to host an exhibition that's designed by her. Now, not only do we get Amelia's great experience, what we really get through her is her lived experience. And whilst I realise she's only one person, Amelia says a lot about what we are about us as a museum, because we are about people. Our museum cares for over 50,000 items and 25,000 books, and it's one of the most unique collections in the world charting the history of medicine. Medicine is literally one of the very few things that we can honestly say has touched the lives of all humankind. And medical advance is a great prism as to how we can view the technological, social, and political advances of our time. Like many of you, our true cause in caring for these items isn't about freezing them in aspic or keeping them behind glass, but moreover it's to discover a shared living history behind them and to open up conversation around people's lived experience today. When our museum, the Thackeray, embarked on its redevelopment project in 2019, there was a single objective that underpinned everything we do, which was to co-curate and co-create with our community. We had 200 participants that worked with us with the redisplays of our galleries, from disability activists, children and young people in our local community, active and retired healthcare workers, volunteers, and many more in between. In Cutting Edge, amongst the unique displays that are set out like hospital bay beds, we chart medical innovations from the very first x-rays in the world, discovering anesthesia, and the first dialysis machine. These innovations are so inspiring in themselves, but really importantly for us, each shares a personal human story that we can relate to, and it highlights their impact. Normal and Me represents one of our most collaborative spaces. Our collections of everything from hearing aids to prosthetics are shown with the thoughts, feelings, and lived experiences of those who have to rely on them. Showing these items and how they've developed over time teaches people about living this way of life. However, the insight of somebody like Dr. Amy Kavanagh, who shares that on the one hand, I disrupt what a blind person is. I'm blonde, I'm female, I'm professional, I'm middle class. I don't look blind. But also, on the other hand for Amy, as a woman using a white cane, I experience unwanted touching every single day. I've been dragged across roads, pulled out of train carriages, and pushed around shops without being asked if I wanted assistance. And this brings a much greater depth of understanding into the life of a blind person than our objects could ever do alone. We really hope this provokes conversation and debate around challenging people's perceptions and changing discrimination that still pervades our society today. And in the core, we provide a free space for people to meet and talk about shared experiences through numerous community engagement projects. This one, Freedom for Girls, comes to us every month, and they use the space to make sanitary pads. It's part of their mission to help those who are trying to fight period poverty. Our journey, like any major redevelopment, has not been easy. Keeping our community engaged was paramount, so we launched the Thackeray Emergency Museum, an ambulance that was going to tour around the community areas that we're in, providing learning opportunities and fun for all the family whilst we were on the move. No one, however, could have predicted the impact of COVID-19, which pushed our reopening back an entire year. Our determination and our ambition has never ceased. Our ability to harness creativity and to encourage conversation is not a difficult challenge we face, funnily enough. Our team, the people we work with, the community around us have this in absolute spades. Our challenge today is to fully realise the power and potential of all of our spaces, to ensure that we can co-curate, co-create, and continue to democratise our collections. And for us, that's ensuring we can cause conversation and debate around society and its issues. And to do all this, we have a responsibility to forge a sustainable, forward-thinking organisation that continues to be here for communities in years to come. In the words of my predecessor, Nat Edwards, who some of you may know and who actually entered us into this awards, I can't encapsulate it better myself. We have shown what even a small museum can be when the world we are living in demands action. And we have provided a platform for our community to show what they can achieve, sometimes against apparently overwhelming odds. This simple story of a museum that is a place for connection, for action, and for doing it well is the best case that I can make for our museum and for all of our museums. I'd like to take a rare moment to thank some of the people that helped us on this journey, particularly our funders, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, Wellcome Trust, Arts Council England, and the Thackeray Medical Research Trust, not to mention our staff, the volunteers and trustees, amongst many others, for enabling and believing in our journey. And finally, whilst I realise there's obviously some element of competition in why we're all here, and all of the brilliant organisations that are here to potentially win this award, I'd like to thank all of you for having the courage to push the boundaries of what we all do together and for believing in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will continue with the Anatomy Museum.
Good afternoon. My name is Eva Libeta, and I'm a curator of Riga Students University Anatomy Museum. So, I would like to start with a borrowed thought that all museums, in fact, are full of bodies. The bodies of visitors gaze at the bodies of knowledge. However, there are types of museums that are especially full of bodies, and these are anatomy museums, where humans literally look at humans. People just seem to be fascinated with the realness of what they see. And this realness is both our appeal and our challenge. So that's why we are very happy to be nominated for the Museum Award, as we see it also as a recognition that anatomy museums could be a legitimate and valuable part of the wider museum community. So we reopened for visitors in 2021, and first time in the museum's history we became freely accessible to the general public. So we are located in city center of Riga. It's the capital city of Latvia, in one of the university's campuses called Anatomicum. So the museum building is the small one on the right, and the large building in the middle is the Institute of Anatomy and Anthropology. So this building is also the place where originally Anatomy Museum was founded in the year 1920. And it remained in that building up until 2016, when we started the renovation project. It might seem not to be a big deal to take the collection from one building to another one. It's just some 30 meters across the yard, but eventually it turned out to be a great challenge. Because the collection was made 100 years ago, it was made for the different purpose and under different ethical and legal framework. So we started as a teaching collection in 1920. So the original purpose of the museum was to train physicians that they could provide a better care for the living. And in order to do so, they needed to study the bodies of the dead. At that time in Latvia, it was a law that if someone dies and there is no one who wants to take care of the burial, then the person's body was transported to the anatomical theater for the students, and they performed the dissections. If they found something that was interesting, they could ask for a preparator to make a specimen. So they took the organ out, put it in the jar, filled up the jar with formaldehyde, and put on the museum shelf. Skeletons were boiled and mounted. The casts were made and painted. Or in other words, the dead were used for making and growing the anatomical knowledge for the benefit of the living. So this is how most of our collection came to be. So in 2016, I was invited to curate the renovation of the museum. I was excited and horrified at the same time because I thought how it's even possible. In a way, I loved the old exhibitions. They were kind of frozen in time. They looked almost exactly the same as in 1930s. They had this sense of past in the air and the sense of formaldehyde a little bit in the air also. So very dusty and they were shadowy, but they had their charm. But everyone had to admit that the museum is also poorly available even to the medical audiences. The collection is poorly kept, poorly documented, and the change is needed. It was challenging because the specimens were old, odd, and sometimes very graphic. So the first challenge was about really the exhibition design. So they looked perfectly fine in their original setting, but how would they look on the modern shelves, illuminated, surrounded by the screens and multimedia? We thought, would they look outdated or even repelling in contrast to the modernity of the present day? We also didn't want the museum look too cold and clinical and lose its intimacy and humanity. And the second challenge was, of course, about the narratives, how these objects should be communicated with the modern museum goer. It took some years, but eventually I think we did a good job in redesigning and redefining the museum. So we had the best cooperation with our exhibition design company, Dede Studio. They managed to capture the essence of the museum and preserve it into the new exhibitions. So we left numerous historical references, such as historical showcases, drawings, photographs, some design elements from the 1930s, while adding a nice multimedia touch to our historical collection, the touch that was delicate, that was respectful, and that was really fitting to the historical collection. When it came to the narratives, we preserved the original medical information that these objects embody while presenting them within their historical context. We simply didn't see no other way how to communicate this collection unless it's through the history. And also, where it was possible, we tried to include the personal stories of the people from whom the specimens were made. This like highlighting the importance of the body donations also nowadays. As a result, we have the museum space that is not only informative and educational, but it's also very intimate, kind, and truly beautiful. So this is a perfect place where to explore the diversity of human body, which we do through our public programming that is mostly based on the creativity and arts. We do specimen drawing classes together with medical artists. We do nude drawing sessions together with our local drink and draw community. And also we try to invite the professional artists to give their unique perspectives on our historical specimens. And at the end, the greatest validation of our work, of course, come from our visitors, and especially the regular visitors that come to the museum not just once, but time and time again, because they find the exhibitions endlessly explorable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now continue with the Senegal archives.
Thank you, Mathieu. Dear colleagues and everyone in the EMYA team, first off, we want to thank you for having us. We, that means Jakob Kuratli, behind me now, Anina Steinmann and myself, Peter Erhard. We are quite honored and excited to be here on behalf of the rest of our quite small team. But why are we here exactly? Well, we have asked that ourselves many times. It turns out that being one of the oldest Abbey archives in Europe, founded in the 7th century, preserving a uniquely large number of historical documents and carrying the UNESCO World Heritage label, as well as the UNESCO Memory of the World label, like our neighbors here from the archives of the Crown of Aragon, does not indeed serve as a guarantee for an EMYA nomination. To achieve that, we also had to become a museum. Since 2019, when we opened our exhibition space, we have been operating not only as keepers and researchers of historical documents in our archives, but also as the creators of exhibitions, designed to connect the public with its rich history and us, shy archivists, with a wider public. This rare double function allows us to turn something inaccessible into something accessible and display the original documents in a permanent exhibition, The Miracle of Transmission, the title of our exhibition, of our permanent one, that happened in St. Gallen. Display these original documents, but also annual exhibitions like our current one about Victus et Vestitus. You hear Latin is our father language. Food and clothes, the care for elderly people. As archivists, we traditionally have the task of preserving and the transmission in the best way possible and fight against all the global and local threats that you can see on the video clip, which could be enlarged every day almost in these times. The new challenge is to balance the preservation and exhibition of our documents. And our biggest concerns in this regard are a stable, preferably stable climate, reduced slow light, and of course, security through mobility.
In terms of climate, we combine macro and microclimatic measures in the exhibition space. The desired temperature is ensured by the controlled room climate and the relative humidity within the individual display cases. This way, we can meet strict requirements in a highly energy-efficient manner. You can see the various measuring points in the shown outline of the exhibition space. The blue room in the center contains the highly valuable plan of St. Gall, the centerpiece of the permanent exhibition, that requires even more care. This is due to the fact that the plan remains part of the exhibition for a total of 10 years, unlike most other documents, which we regularly exchange out of conservational concerns. For that reason, the plan is kept into a specially constructed climatic display case, and it's located in a separate clay-lined and fully climate-controlled room. You can see that room here. After a 12-minute introductory video, the display case opens and the plan is illuminated for only 20 seconds with a maximum illuminance of 50 lux. That means that on a normal exhibition day, the plan of St. Gall is exposed to light for less than 10 minutes. The display case in action would look like this. Of course, we also protect every other document in the exhibition space from too much light exposure. The objects in the normal display cases are illuminated with a maximum of 40 lux. The preserving of transmission is not an invention of modern archivists. For centuries, the documents in the Abbey library, in the Abbey archives, have been safely stored in the mobile cases you can see here, all for a guaranteed and quick evacuation. This appreciation of transmission and therefore of the importance of protecting the documents in the first place is something we want our visitors to become aware of.
In the spirit of mental mobility, we are going to challenge you with a third speaker, but I promise last speaker change. You have heard about some of the challenges we face every day within our double role as exhibition makers and as archivists. Many of those challenges are similar to the ones other museums experience as well. We deal with an international audience and different age groups. We try to present historical, mostly written content in a modern and engaging way, for example, through hands-on stations, as you will see in the movie clip, or through a digital presence. But we do feel like we have this extra responsibility towards introducing new perspectives and new approaches to break with some of the stereotypes about the dark Middle Ages. We have amazing stories about women selling their kingdoms for a few horses and then go on what I imagine to be an adventurous and wild pilgrimage to Rome. To showcase such alternative views on our past and connect them with our present, we have to navigate through the demanding needs of our documents, as well as you've repeatedly heard for the past 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. But we also have to navigate politically through a number of parties involved in the working process, like the Abbey Library as a partner, or the Canton of St. Gallen and the Catholic Church as co-owners. And finally, we also have to navigate through the financial and spatial challenges that come with such a joint custody. But throughout all of this, we really try not to lose focus on what's important: the accessibility of a piece of history for everybody. We want to be barrier-free, not only physically, but also mentally. And we strive to be a connecting link between institutions, people, and their memory. So, what we want you to take away from this presentation is that we encourage specifically archives, other archives, to take on this double role as an institution that preserves as well as reveals people's heritage and memory. Because transparency and accessibility are key elements for a democratic cultural landscape, and quite frankly, also for a good and barrier-free exhibition. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you for these very interesting presentations, very informative. And thank you for having been so good with your timings. We have time to discuss. That's good. Right, so what's very interesting, I thought, and that was the reason why we also put all of you in the same panel, is that here we have 4 well-established institutions or organizations developing either new projects or rethinking new projects. And as it says in the description of the program, you've all tried to depart and resisted the temptation to give us facts about what your institutions are all about. You started telling stories. And in that way, you were able to address broader issues. And this is where it becomes very interesting to use your institutional histories and go much further. So you have, for example, elements of memory in the case of the archives, broader elements. You have elements of public health in the Thackeray. And you mentioned something very interesting, I thought, which we could start there, about the police museum. You said, we want to show another face to another face or another side of us, which I thought was very interesting. And it's actually, I think the four of you, the four teams, you've actually wanted to do something along these lines, to change the face. And let's start with that. Let's start unpacking a little bit how you've worked on that, how you've dealt with how people, so your communities, the populations around you, perceived the topics, and how you went about perhaps trying to deconstruct. And how do you sense that you are indeed deconstructing that? And this reminds me also of some of the things I know a little bit from the Thackeray Museum, for example. Some of the challenges that your predecessor, Nat Edwards, mentioned about how certain communities around the museum may have certain perceptions of health itself, the health system, public health, etc. So let's start unpacking that. How does that process work? Who'd like to start that? And the most important thing about any dialogue is a microphone. So anyone who would like to start? Over there. Great. Let's go there. Maybe there's a button. I have another one here.
Thank you. So it's interesting in terms of perceptions, certainly with the Thackeray Museum in terms of our building and community. So I've often referred to the Thackeray as almost like the Buckingham Palace of Leeds, which is lovely. It's fantastic in our architecture, but you don't just wander into Buckingham Palace and have a lovely day out with your kids. You don't kind of go in there and debate difficult issues. So it's also, I think, kind of a measure of actually how intimidating we are as an institution to our communities around us, and for sure we are. Kind of, I suppose, maybe even four kind of institutional stories: that of a workhouse, that of the NHS and the health system, and that of the Thackeray Medical Instrument Company. And these are all got histories, really amazing histories of innovation, of healthcare, of saving lives, but they've also got difficult histories around medical bias, depression, and these are all kind of perceptions that our community has. So certainly one of the things that we do to really combat that, as I alluded to, is our kind of ethos of co-production, which runs through everything we do. It's very much at kind of the heart of all of our work at the Thackeray, and is something that we're continuing to develop and work on. So it's about getting the communities in to our building. It's getting them engaged into our story, and it's making them part of telling that story. It's getting their perceptions and being kind of open and receptive to those stories, whether they're difficult stories, whether they're positive stories, and really being a platform for their voice. And I think through doing that, that's how we make ourselves more relevant to our community. That's how we make ourselves more useful, and ultimately how we make friends with our community as well.
Thanks very much. Sorry.
This one is working now.
Ah, great. Thank you.
As you know, in generally, mission of the police, fighting against crime and criminal person. But with this museum, our museum, we have started to tell a new story to the citizens, to our society. For example, the role of the police in our independence war. and the many expression used by the society coming from our activities. For example, go insane. What mean? Çok sinirlenmek.
Angry, getting out.
Getting angry, getting very angry, for example. Bir de sen
Additionally, the traditional role of the police, as you know, fighting against crime and criminals. That's it's known well. But in this museum and with this project, our institution opens a new door to our citizens and to our society we have come from. And after this museum, we are open our most secured doors to the people, and probably in the future of throughout in their life, never come to police and never apply to police. Many people feel and don't feel interested in the police and police issues. But in this museum, and thanks to this project, we have reached a new paradigm. And many people like this, innocent people, we can say them, coming to our central buildings and working around our officials and our offices. We are working in there. When we are working there, they are working in our rooms of the museum. This is a new role for our institution. As you know, our institution is an official structure, and we are working with the hierarchy, as you see now. And with this museum, in the near future, we will reach really good opportunities with, to connect our people and our society. That's all. Thank you very much.
Shall we pass on the microphone to you?
It's interesting that we are included in this panel about the institutional history because for our museum it was never our aim to communicate the university's history. The university has the history museum also, so we were the anatomy museum. But as it turned out, it was impossible to create the anatomy museum without talking about where did we get those specimens from, who did made them, how they were made, for what reason all this have been done. So we needed to touch the university's history and also the history of science of the time of the 1920s and 1930s. So this is our story, how we came into this panel.
I mean, in the Abbey of St. Gall, there are many stories circulating. Stories based on a legend. I don't know if you know it, with the bear who helps the saint to build his cell in this remote valley close to the Lake of Constance. And there are very nice anecdotes. And talking about facts and stories, I mean, we were kind of overloaded by many stories told us by chronicles. And we wanted to make the difference between stories and facts, and using the famous phrase by Marc Bloch, who is a kind of hero for us historians, les belles théories détruisent les méchants faits détruisent les belles théories. The bad facts destroy nice theories. That was our duty as archivists, to pull out our drawers and get original documents who demonstrate the contrary as told by the chronicles. So we really enjoyed this destroying fake news. And I mean, that's a big topic for us, to educate people to look at
the sources and to follow the course of the river until they find this source.
Thank you. It's one of the things that I think you've all been dealing with and developing models, because one of the things we wanted to discuss also with this panel is you are changing in many ways the models of your institutions. And part of that is you've been thinking of new, very complex models where you are part of a network. Now, Jamie and Edward, you started broaching on that. You're part of a university, you're also part of a university, you're necessarily part of a very complex network of different types of actors, of stakeholders, etc. Where is this going? Tell us a little bit more about that. What do you think works now? Who are the links perhaps with social groups, municipal groups, etc. That's, let's see how you are situated within that as well.
I think there's a couple of things there to unpack. The first is something that's come up a couple of times today, and in fact we were discussing at lunchtime, which is the actual concept of what a museum is at all right now. You know, we have museum in our title, we've got a collection, we've got lots of amazing stuff, got quite a few amazing stories behind it, but actually really it's about sharing the stories and the lived experiences behind those items and the people that have had them in their lives and how it affects society, politics, religion, democracy right now. And frankly, there's only one way to do that, and that is through partnerships. We need people in order to uncover those stories and those lived experiences. We gain that through decent partnerships with our community, with the NHS, with the hospital, with universities, across the broadest section of society that we can possibly manage, and I genuinely believe that that's going to be the way forward for most of us from now on.
Do you see yourselves as having a new role, so telling stories, but also...
Yeah, well, I think in terms of our space and in terms of our community, we have got, we've got our, what we sort of call our local kind of Hare Hills community, the people who live around here on one side, and we've got the people who work, our NHS community on the other side in the hospital. And I think one of the really kind of powerful things, certainly in terms of kind of networks, in terms of storytelling, is bringing those two communities together in the sort of locus of our museum. A really powerful example that struck me kind of recently, we're all about something called medical capital, so we're trying to get everybody kind of more confident in healthcare, confident in being able to seek healthcare, confident in being able to see themselves as healthcare professionals. And we had somebody, we did, rather gory kind of eye dissections where young kids would come in, but they were facilitated by, our friends in the NHS community, and just seeing that kind of interaction with those doctors, with those people that want to be future doctors, it was such a kind of powerful, in a sort of a little vignette of I think what we're about in terms of bringing people together.
Did you create any new positions to facilitate that in terms of models?
So in terms of the facilitation, we, I think it was through our informal learning department, with kind of a micro-volunteering opportunity. And that again was, I suppose, the individual who I'm thinking of, we actually worked with them on an exhibition about microscopes. So actually in terms of why community and networks are so important to us is because we can build relationships, and off those relationships we can just, we find more and more opportunities to do things. We find more and more opportunities to bring people together.
Super. Thanks. Anyone else would like to chime in?
Just after the establishing of the museum, many domestic and international level institutions applied to our institution for sharing experience on establishing of the museum. And many of other country police institutions also applied to our institutions, and sharing experience and information with them also. And also domestically, some of other parties of our states and institutions inspired our point of reached by our institutions. And as you know, it's important to conclude with a good heritage for the future and legacy for the new generations. Yeah, it's really important to pass it to the next generations. And many students from universities coming to study in our museum for the history of the police. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to?
Yeah, the Anatomy Museum is part of the university, and but we have a very large part of autonomy. So the university's leadership doesn't really command us what to do. So we are very lucky with this, and we're very free in our actions. But at the same time, we are very friendly with all the other university institutions. They always are very happy to bring their colleagues in or the guests if they have to the museum. We also participate in the teaching process. So in general, we are part of the Institute of History of Medicine. So we have History of Medicine classes happening there. And also we have a cooperation with a neighboring building, which is the Institute of Anatomy and Anthropology. We have teachers coming in with the students in their classes. So, yeah, we work for a not very long time yet. So this is something that we are planning to work on and invite also the people from the social sciences, bioethics. So I think there is an endless topics that you can explore in our exhibitions.
Thank you. Peter, did you want to?
Thanks. I mean, it's a little bit like in the Anatomic Museum. We had to remove the dust from our reputation. Archives normally are considered as hidden places and maybe just considered by crazy genealogists working there. And if I'm thinking of an anatomic museum, I'm thinking of the Tower of the Fools in Vienna, where I got my studies. So that's maybe the best contrast you can find in your field. After removing this dust, we tried to create new bonds with new people. Yeah, now we are trying to get in contact with schools. We are looking beyond the limits, the borders of our Catholic reputation. Or this is maybe the biggest challenge we've got in St. Gall. And yeah, we are enlarging a little bit our exhibition space. Now we are creating a garden. We have a monastery garden. I mean, we have on our plan of St. Gall mentioned several times the first drawing of a garden. And so we can try to convince garden lovers to come to our place.
All of you, can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, all of you. I think we have, that's pretty much the time we had for this panel. Lots of questions that we can discuss with a good coffee now. I think we follow on with the coffee break. So thank you very much, all of you.